Hello, you're back with Brooke Lloyd on the bridge, and today we're going to be speaking with special guest Marty Lloyd. So, Marty, I'm going to ask you a couple questions for this interview. What is it exactly that you do? Tell us about it.
Well, I am the singer of the Freddie Jones Band, and I write the songs. And we've been doing the band. We formed in the early 90s, and we're signed to Capricorn Records by Phil Walden, and had a couple handfuls of AAA radio charting hit songs. And we still play to this day. Not quite as much, but we play a handful of tour dates here and there, and when I'm not doing that, I sell real estate here in Pacific Palisades.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, how did you enter the music industry? I think that's what everybody is really wondering.
The critical question, how did you get into it? Well, at a very early age, I was always gravitating to music, and I would perform on the fireplace mantle in front of my family at get-togethers with my plastic guitar and sing at the top of my lungs. And so I think everybody kind of knew that that's the direction I was going to go. But we formed a band and started taking it more seriously in Chicago. And we just played around bars, and we started playing around Big Ten schools, and we had our little recording of our own CD, and we sold it at our shows at fraternity houses and whoever would have us. And we got to open up for a band called Widespread Panic in Chicago, and their record label was there that night, and it was Capricorn Records, and they heard us and they decided to sign us. And that's how we ended up making records and working with Justin Niebank, the producer, and that's how we ended up with the radio hit songs.
Wow, what an interesting way. What motivated you guys to keep going?
Well, that's a good question. We had met with the record label in Nashville and spent a little time there getting to know them, and they said they wanted to sign us, and we left and said we'd think about it. And I remember having lunch on the way driving back up to Chicago from Nashville, and I remember us having to kind of talk each other into, at least there were one or two of us that they were skeptical about moving forward with it. And that's when I remember sitting at the dining room or the lunch table like, what are you guys thinking? This is of course we're doing this. There are no questions about it. We're doing this. We're making the record, and we moved forward and recorded the first record in a couple of weeks. And we were out playing the songs before we knew it. It was on the radio. But the band did go through some bumps in the road, and there were times when there was a time where we sort of disbanded. We stopped playing for about 5 years, and we got back together for the Boys and Girls Club in Chicago and sold a bunch of tickets, and that was us deciding to keep moving forward, and that was in about 2005, I think that was.
Well, that's great that you guys decided to keep on going. Can I ask you, where did your inspiration come from?
Do you mean inspiration for songwriting or
Yes.
performing or record, or all the above, probably, right? Well, inspiration can come from a lot of different places, obviously. And sometimes the song comes to you first, and it just pops into your head, and the melody. Oftentimes that's what will happen with me. I'll hear the melody first, and I may be house cleaning or, just walking along the sidewalk somewhere, and a melody will pop in my head. And that's usually the very beginning. And then I'll go back to the guitar and I'll find something to play to that melody that fits. And then I'll write lyrics to it. So oftentimes the inspiration is the melody for me.
Yes, a lot of songwriters have said the same thing, that they get all their inspiration from the melody, or they'll be listening to something in the car and it'll spark something. But is there ever a time when you have writer's block? And if so, how do you cure it?
Well, of course, we all feel like we have writer's block. And that may manifest in a way that is not necessarily writer's block, but just a lack of routine and a lack of putting in the work, whether something comes to you or not. Bob Dylan always said that he sits, whether it's with the piano or the guitar, and he writes every day for, I don't know if it's for X amount of time, but he does it every day. And sometimes something shows up, sometimes it doesn't. But you have to put in that time for the good inspirations, for the good songs to sometimes just show up. I refer to it as having an antenna. And if your antenna isn't up, then you're not going to receive anything. Nothing's going to show up. So you have to put yourself in the seat, as Bob Dylan says. And you have to be open, and your antenna has to be receiving. And you can't be receiving if you're not in the chair and ready to go.
Yes, okay. Well, when did you know that songwriting was particularly for you?
I think it was high school and into college. In fact, I was just visiting for a get-together, a reunion of some high school friends of mine, and one of them, he and I had played in a little high school band together. And he remembered and pointed out, we're all sitting there hanging out, talking, and he's like, the subject of the old band came up, and he said, do you remember the time when you told us that you thought we really needed to go out and find a singer? And he said, do you remember all of us looking at you like you were nuts? And thinking, hey, I think we're good in that department, Marty. I think we're okay. So, what was the question again?
And did you know that songwriting was for you?
Yeah, well, that's when I knew singing was for me, when I had that that vote of confidence from my bandmates. And then from there, that's when it kind of started. The melodies started to show up, and I would drift around with chords on the guitar and like sing melodies and throw some words together. And it was usually when we were all setting up to play a little gig somewhere that I would kind of step up to the mic and just sort of play through these ideas once in a while, and everyone would kind of listen, and they didn't really know how to chime in and play along too much, and I didn't know how to direct them, and we didn't really know what we were doing, but that was the very beginning of it, when the melody started to come, when we were doing our sound checks and stuff like that.
Yes, a lot of singers have said that songwriting just comes naturally, and they really just feel the flow of the music. Anyway, are you still in the music industry today?
I am. It's in a little bit of a different form. It's no longer in a tour bus, and it's no longer playing 200 some dates a year like we did. And we're not really officially with one particular record label, like kind of the old business model of doing things. We were with a label up until a couple years ago, and then decided we would start just recording our own material, paying for it ourselves. We certainly have access to plenty of great studios and access to plenty of great additional musicians to help us, fill in with lots of great instrumentation. And so we have stayed with it. I think we play maybe 30 shows a year or something like that. So now it's hopping on an airplane at LAX. LAX is more like my office now. So we all fly in from different places where we live and play either, whether it's one show that weekend, or we try to string maybe a couple, 2 or 3 together, and then everyone goes home. So still writing, still recording, and still playing shows.
Yeah, well, that's great that you guys are still, moving forward. Since COVID-19 struck, though, how has it been different for you guys? I know you just gave us a little bit about that, but elaborate.
Well, my biggest worry since I sell real estate here on the west side in LA, my biggest worry, and I was laughing about this not too long ago with people in the office. I said, my biggest worry about 2020 was that I was going to be playing too much. And the calendar was looking very, very busy. And we have a new booking agent in Nashville. And I thought, this is going to be a difficult balancing act. And boy, was I wrong. The last show we played was February this year. And here we are in late October. And we haven't played since February 28th. So no touring. However, we did get some new recording done. So we used the time very wisely, even though we can't be out connecting to fans in person. We're recording some new songs and a remake of our old hit song from the 90s. And I think Sony in Nashville, a subsidiary of Sony, is going to release to radio. The question is when, because of COVID. Not sure when we're going to be able to go back out and play, but we want to coordinate the release of the singles to radio around that. So probably hoping, late winter, we can get out and start playing a little bit again. Hopefully sooner, but certainly hope it's no later than that.
Okay, well, thank you for your time today, Marty. It was great having you here on The Bridge. We'll be back.
Thank you.